welcome to Cervello Live, the show about money and life and some other stuff, where we try and help share some really useful and practical pieces of information to you so that you can make better informed financial choices in your life. A couple of things to start off with. You can tell I've got a bit of a stubble going on today, which is unusual for me. And part of that is because, and Russ said, producer Russ said to me, what are you doing turning up with a bit of stubble on your face? Now, the reason I've been is because I've got to go for a haircut today as well. And one of my little pleasures in life is a really nice haircut with a Turkish shave. So I like to sort of grow a bit of beard out before I go on my Turkish shave, just so I feel like I'm getting value for money. So it'll be a nice experience to get rid of this whilst to get my haircut done as well. Few things that I want to talk to you about today, and hopefully they're things where they're going to be tips that are going to help you make better informed financial decisions. And here's the topics that I want to cover off. I want to talk a little bit about student loans. Now, interestingly, student loans are something that we advise on here at Cervello particularly often. It's not part of a sort of regulated financial planning practices job, typically, to advise on student loans. But I'm going through it at the minute. So I'm going through getting my head around student loans because my eldest daughter, Charlotte, is off to university in September. So I'm having a lot of conversations with clients at the minute who are in a similar sort of position, having adult children who are going to university and trying to navigate that that new world for a lot of us of student finance, because we've never had to do it before. So I want to share what I've learned about student loans, because if you're anything like me and a lot of my clients, you're going to find that talking through that really useful. Next, I want to talk books. As you know, if you watched any Cervello Live, or you know me through any network, one of the things that I like to talk about is books. And there's 3 books at the minute which I am absolutely loving, and I think you should definitely read to enhance your thoughts around money, your life, and just continue that process of continuous learning. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about 3 books, as I say. Number 1 is going to be The Automatic Millionaire, one of my all-time favorite books, and something that certainly effectively allowed me to partially automate my journey to financial success. Number 2 is Designing Your Life, talking about how we can build a plan that fits around doing what we love and doing what we're best at. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the key question in that book that I find really insightful when I ask clients, and certainly I'd love to share that with you. And then, talking of questions, I'm going to share a book that I've just finished called Don't Split the Difference by a guy called Chris Voss. And Chris is an ex-FBI negotiator. The book is wide-ranging, but we're going to talk about one specific question that effectively is a really powerful way to communicate with people via email. So I'm going to share that as well. What I also want to do, yes, I do run a chartered financial planning business. We help people every day achieve their financial goal by guiding them through the right steps to achieve that. But you can start in that journey to financial success, or continue in that journey to financial success without a financial planner. And what I'd like to do is share some of the tips that you might want to consider taking action on to get you closer to achieving that goal of financial success, achieving that goal of understanding what financial independence means to you. So I'm going to share some tips on that. And then I'm going to share a little bit of maths. Always good to end a live stream on maths. No, I should have planned this better. And what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the 4% rule. And what the 4% rule is a really broad way of working out whether you're potentially close to achieving financial independence. Now, there's good things about the 4% rule, but there's also a lot that it doesn't factor in. And I'm going to be talking about where to use it and when not to use it in your life. Now, if you've got what we'd love to hear about, because what I want to make sure is when we're doing these Cervello Lives, and normally today's an exception, but normally we do Cervello Live and interview a special guest. We've got some amazing special guests coming up in future shows. But what I'd also like to do is highlight topics around personal finance that are going to make a difference to your life. So let me know, what can I talk about? What can I share? What topics, tips, ideas can I share that's going to have a positive impact for your life? Because fundamentally, the idea of Cervello Live is we're here to help. And what I'd love to do is make sure that effectively we're covering topics that are going to give you some ideas to improve your financial life and potentially get closer to financial independence. So as wide and as broad as that is, let me know what things that you're thinking about financially at the minute, and how can we help add value to your life. You can get in touch with us in any way. You can email me, chris@cervellofp.co.uk. You can check out the website, www.cervellofp.co.uk. Feel free, there's a little button on the website that you can click, and effectively you can let us know what you'd like us to talk about in Cervello Live that's going to help you move forward financially. Because let's be honest, money isn't be all and end all. There's a million things more important than money. Number one, the finite resource of time is more important. And number two, for me, and probably for you, family is more important. But money is a tool that allows you to do the things you want, both with your time and with your family. And as we're talking about family, let's talk about student finance. Because as I said earlier on in the show, I've got this weird experience that I'm still trying to wrap my head around of having an adult child. It seems only yesterday Charlotte was a little toddler running around, and now she's a grown-up. And whilst I'm trying to wrap my head around that, we're also trying to help her plan for the next stage of her life, which is going to university and working out the best way to pay for and fund that university. Now, there's a bunch of ways that you can do it. You can pay for university costs direct. We decided with Charlotte that actually, from a perspective of her taking ownership of her own financial life, now she's an adult, and understanding a bit more about sort of managing money, we wanted her to pay for her own education. But what we did say to her is we'd fund the accommodation costs to help and support her. So we've done that. We've funded the accommodation costs, and she's paying for the tuition through the student loan arrangement. But what I found is student loans, because we didn't deal with it every day, was a bit of a new world for us. And it was interesting because I found myself wrapping my head around it personally, because I needed to make sure that we understood it to help and support Charlotte. And then we got loads of queries and questions, particularly from clients who had kids who were approaching that age, about student finance. So I just want to share some things in terms of what's happening, both in terms of student finance now and what's happening next year in terms of what's changing. So let's talk about what the rules are now. So effectively, student finance is a tax. It's not a loan, because as the rules sit today, only 23% of people ever pay the student loan off. So only just under a quarter ever pay their loan off. Now, why is that? Well, the reason for that is because effectively your loan, as it sits today, and if you're going to university in September, again, it changes next year and we'll talk a little bit more about that, effectively your loan gets written off after 30 years. So you're in a position where you take a loan at 18, you go up to 21, and it gets added on every year. By the time you reach 51, effectively your loan is if you stop studying at that point, effectively your loan is written off at 51. So you don't pay any more money back after that point, and anything you owe is effectively gone. It's completely written off. So what happens in terms of loan repayments is that if you earn more than 27, 20, just over 27,000, it's £27,295. You start paying it back, and what you pay is 9% of that 27,295. Starting there, anything above that, you pay 9% back of your student loan. So you're earning 25 grand a year. As it sits today, you don't pay a penny back of your student loan. You earn 27,296. You start paying that student loan back, but only on the amount above the amount you earn on the 27,295. So if you're earning 30 grand a year, effectively you've got 2,800 above the 2,700 above the 27,295. You only pay 9% on that bit above. So really important to know, and you pay effectively an extra 9%. So interestingly, even though people see it as a loan and think about repaying it early and that sort of stuff, what it is, because the majority of people never ever pay their loan off, is a tax. It's a tax on anything you earn above 27,295 at 9%. Now the interest rate is quite expensive if you looked at the loan as a standalone loan, because you pay 3% plus inflation on whatever you've got in your student loan pot, and the student loan company will send you a statement every year saying this is what you owe us. However, if you know that the only amount that you're going to pay is 9% above that 27,295, and then in 30 years' time it's going to be written off, you know the majority of people are just never, ever, ever going to pay that money back, probably including you. So if you're in the 70-odd%, the 77% of people who are going to be medium earners, but not enough to pay all of it back, the likelihood is you never will. However, there is some changes afoot, because the government have realised that loaning this money out for people to get educated, but not claiming over 3/4 back, is probably not a model that they can sustain. So what they've done is change the rules a bit. And what they've done is quite interesting, because they've not increased the interest rate. Funny enough, they've reduced the interest rate. So from next year, the interest rate isn't going to be 3% plus inflation. It's just going to be inflation. It's going to be RPI, which is a measure of inflation. There's two main measures, CPI and RPI. They're using RPI. So actually the interest rates are going down. But there are two really important changes you need to be aware of. Number one is they're reducing the threshold for when student loans kick in. So previously you had to earn 27,295 to start paying your student loan back. That's going down. That's going down to £25,000 a year. So as soon as you or your kids, if you're watching this and you've got kids approaching university age, earn over £25,000 a year, that's when they'll start paying it back, and the rate is the same. The rate that they'll pay is 9%. The big change is the amount of time that you actually pay the loan back, and this is going to mean a fundamental difference in terms of whether you either pay the loan back or you don't. Because currently, as I say, if you've had student loans in the past, it was written off after 30 years. As of the new rules, if you're going to university next September, this is when these new rules kick in, you're going to have a loan that isn't written off after 30 years. It's actually written off after 40 years. So instead of being written off at 51, it's been written off at 61. And the government have worked out that will fundamentally, like these changes in the rules, reducing the threshold and and increasing the amount of time you've got to pay before it's written off will change the game in terms of the amount of people who pay their student loans off. Because what will happen is that currently only about 23% of people ever pay their student loan back before it's written off. That's going to change from 23% to 52%. So you've still got, just under a 50-50 chance of ever paying your student loan back, but the rules are different. Now, who does that impact? I suppose if you're still doing your A-levels, or you've got kids who are still doing your A-levels and won't start till next year, being aware of that change is really important, because I'd never suggest that any child should not go to university because of the money, because there's other important factors to consider when it comes to that experience. And certainly when Charlotte's thinking about this, she's thinking about doing a career she loves and being qualified for that, and the university experience while she's there as well, and that sense of independence they get from going away at 18 and doing all that sort of stuff. So certainly wouldn't suggest that you wouldn't go to university next year, because it's more likely that you'll pay your loan back. But just bear in mind that the rules are fundamentally changing. One interesting thing, and I think this is really important, is people who are thinking about deferring this year. So if you're in a position where you're thinking about going to university this year, and you think, right, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a year off and go next year. Fine, absolutely fine in terms of making that decision. However, bear in mind the fact that if you do that, you'll be under the new student finance rules, where you're taking on that liability effectively for 10 years longer, and it kicks in at a lower income. And just factor that into the decision-making process. Certainly, having a year off and then paying for it for another 10 years might be something you might want to consider, and something that might sort of change your decision-making process in terms of that. Again, money is one thing, living your life is in the way you want to is more important, but just be well informed, and hopefully talking about the changes in student loans allows you to do that. Any questions on student loans, let me know, but there is some amazingly good content. Most of what I've spoken about today I learned from other sources, particularly Martin Lewis's video on student loans from his ITV show is amazing. And the original one is a YouTube video where Martin Lewis is sharing what he knows about the student loans with a room full of students. And certainly that was my first entry into understanding about student loans in a particular level of depth, and one that you should definitely check out, either if you're approaching university age, or you've got kids who are approaching university age and thinking about going to university. Because that, for me, was the starting point on thinking about learning about this sort of stuff, and thinking about how we help Charlotte plan and prepare for that next stage. Let's talk a little bit about books. So I love to read. Before I do that, actually, if you are in a position, I'm sure producer Russ on the other side of the camera is keeping an eye on the social media. If there are any comments, questions, areas of finance you'd like to cover off, please do comment below. Even if it's just to say hello, I'll make sure Russ puts that in the chat so that we can give you a mention on Cervello Live. Let's talk a little bit about books. So there's 3 books that I are either enjoyed in the past and have stayed with me and helped me take positive action to improve my financial life. That's The Automatic Millionaire. I'm going to talk about that. Number one that I'm thinking about a lot, I've read recently and I'm thinking about a lot, particularly in terms of how it can help my clients, but also help me and the people I know think about the next step that I want to take in my life. And then one that just helps me ask better questions and think about how I communicate. So let's cover the first one off first. I want to talk about The Automatic Millionaire, which is an amazing book. Now, I read this probably 3 or 4 years ago. Really enjoyed the book. And effectively, The Automatic Millionaire is about getting out of your own way from a financial perspective. Now, why am I really into getting out of your own way? Because I know that often when we speak to people about money, they realize that effectively, if they're doing something manually, it's less likely to happen than if they just automate it. So let me give you an example. In my life and my business, I've got an annual reminder to make to increase my pension contributions by 10%. So every year, what I try and do is increase my annual pension contributions by 10%. Now you notice that I don't make my pension contributions manually. And the reason being is because I'd get in the way of myself. I'd either forget to pay, life would get in the way. I just don't want that to be a manual job. And The Automatic Millionaire is all about thinking about the things that you can effectively automate to make sure that you're achieving your financial goal without thinking about it too much. Because once you put yourself in the way of your own goals, it makes it significantly harder. So effectively, what The Automatic Millionaire recommends is setting everything up in an automated way. And and this is a principle that's really, we talk about quite a lot in financial planning and the journey to financial independence, paying yourself first. If you leave saving for your longer term financial future to the end of the month and think, actually, I'll wait to see what I've got to spare before I save, it's never going to happen. It's just, I mean, the reality is the likelihood of you saving what you've got to spare at the end of the month means that you're unlikely to have things spare. What you want to be doing is whenever your income comes in, start saving then, because effectively it's automated, and then you know what you've got left after you've paid yourself first. So paying yourself first is a really important principle. But The Automatic Millionaire is all about the systems and strategies you can put in place to stop making things manual. Now, thankfully, we live in a world where technology has changed the game. Whereas, I don't know, if I wanted to, in a cash economy in the 80s and 90s, if I wanted to save, it was a lot more difficult to automate. Now with online banking, direct debit standing orders, automatic increases to monthly payments, all of that sort of stuff, it is a lot easier to have strategies in place that effectively take that job, automate it. It means that I don't have to think about it, and just I know that my financial future is secured as long as I stick to the plan. And The Automatic Millionaire just provides you with some of the tools, tricks, tips, and techniques you can use to just automate your life in a way that you know that you're on track financially and you don't need to worry about it. Next book is Designing Your Life, which I absolutely love at the minute. And there's an amazing TED talk by a guy called Bill Burnett, one of the authors of Designing Your Life, which is massively insightful. Designing Your Life is all about thinking about what you love, thinking about what you're good at, and designing what you do day in, day out around those things. One of the interesting things I get to do is help people who are at a transition point. So they're at a point where they're thinking about what's next. And very often they've done something successfully and earned well from it for a number of years, if not decades. But they're at a point where they're thinking about what's next. And interestingly, because a lot of my clients are at a stage where they've built a level of wealth, it becomes less about the money and more about what they love. And designing your life is all about making sure that you're making decisions, not only about the money, you know, that might be a factor that you want to consider, but is going to add purpose and value to your life, because that actually is the things that you remember when you look back on. So those elements are so important, and designing your life is really, really useful in terms of having a framework to help you do that. And certainly, if you're thinking about making some changes in your life at whatever stage you're at, I'd certainly recommend Designing Your Life to read, because Designing Your Life isn't ephemeral. It's written by some designers. It's very practical in its nature, and that's what appealed to me. Sometimes conversations about purpose and, you know, become too flowery and cloudy. Designing Your Life is all about taking practical action, taking bite-sized chunks and small steps, trying stuff out to see whether you like it or not, if it's a brand new experience, and just getting you to a point where you're working out what makes you happy and what you're really good at. And it sounds strange, doesn't it? You know, I've got clients who are, you know, in their mid-50s who have done something for 30 years, who come and have a conversation with me, and they're thinking, well, actually, Chris, I know what I'm good at because I've been doing it for 30 years. But if you're in a position where money has become less of a barrier because you've been building financial independence, why are you not doing something you absolutely love? And Designing Your Life is a really good template to help you work out what you might absolutely love to do. So Designing Your Life, I'd certainly give it a read. All of the books, by the way, we're going to be talking about, I'll make sure they're in the show notes. One really fabulous question in Designing Your Life, which I absolutely love, is the Joker question, as I call it, because, you know, we've all got, you know, plan A, what we think we're going to achieve. Some of us have got a plan B. You know, if plan A doesn't go the way I expect it to, what would I be happy with? The Joker question, the wildcard question, is the one I love, because it really opens the mind and allows you to be sort of creative and imaginative in terms of what sort of life you want to lead. And the question is, if money was no object, and you knew nobody would laugh at your plan, what life would you want to lead? And I love that question because it just opens up some doors that you might have assumed were closed before. So take a look at that. And then a quick one, Don't Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Chris Voss is an ex-FBI negotiator who shares some amazing ways to ask questions, build empathy, get results in your work and your life. Not going to delve too much into this one, but I learned a lot from it. You have started to use some of the techniques that Chris explains in the book, and it is a real great way to think about how other people, and you know, when we're communicating with anybody in work, business, and life, a lot of what we do is about empathy and trying to understand that person's point of view. A lot of what Chris talked about is understanding somebody else's point of view, but doing it in a way that's that doesn't damage or break the relationship. And it's really, really, really good stuff. So take a look at that. Chris Voss. We'll make sure that all of those books effectively go in the show notes. If you're watching this, if you're not watching this live, we'll make sure that that gets done. And then last thing I want to talk about is 3 steps you can take towards financial clarity without actually speaking to a financial planner. Firstly, budget plan. The big first practical step you can take is just understand where you are with income and expenditure today. Do it as a family, do it as a husband and wife, or whatever your family is. Sit down, either a spreadsheet or a sort of pen and a piece of paper. Here's what I pay for these elements, and here's what income we've got coming in. It gives you a real insight to not only what you need now as an income, and potentially what you can save for your future, but what's going to change in the future. So what does financial independence look like if you know what you spend and you know what you're going to need in the future? Because what you'll find is some expenditure, let's say, for example, spending money on the kids, if they're grown up by the time you reach financial independence, that will change. But what you will have is more time. So you're in a position where you need to factor that in and factor in the fact that you're going to be spending potentially more money on doing things that you love if you reach that point. But having a really core understanding of the money you've got coming in, the money you've got going out as a starting point is fundamentally important. Secondly, and this is a sort of a relatively new way of looking at this concept. And I'll tell you how it came about. I was asked to go on a podcast last week with the amazing Martha Lawson. She runs a podcast about money and emotion and the connection between the two. And we talked about a wide range of different subjects when we got together. For those of you who don't know, I also, with my daughter, host a podcast called The Kindness Project, where we talk about talk to people doing amazing stuff in the world. So we talked about where kindness and money connect and how we help people get to that point. And you know what, really interesting. I think one thing we mentioned on the on Martha's podcast that I just want to share is just be kind to yourself. You know, nobody has got a perfect financial plan. Nobody's got a perfect life, but you start where you start, and starting where you are now and taking positive action towards a better financial future is always the way. You know, all these elements about assuming that you should be somewhere else financially really doesn't matter. You are where you are. As long as you're taking positive action moving forward, you will get closer to achieving that goal. But one concept Martha shared is effectively having enough money to say no. So if you're in a position where you're working at the minute, what is that number? What number would it take you to effectively just say, I've had enough, I don't need this, I've got enough money not to worry, I'm gonna walk away. Now, on the podcast, Martha called it the F off fund, which is an interesting way of putting it. I'd call it the Zodov fund, potentially. But what is that figure? What is that figure where you can potentially say, I never need to worry about work again, and I'm only doing work because I actually love it? Knowing that number and thinking about that number is a really important part of achieving financial independence. Because financial independence isn't about being rich, it's about living the life you want and being able to make decisions that aren't predicated around having to earn the money. And then I suppose the other practical thing you can do is just get all up-to-date information. You know, the amount of people who come and see us who are in a position where they're basing their own financial plan on just out-of-date information. And part of the value we add is just getting that information up to date. So we're making decisions based on accurate data. But you don't need a financial planner to do that. Phone your pension providers, phone anybody you've got investment with. There's online platforms available to help you understand a little bit more about what you've got. So just collate everything you've got in the spreadsheet, assets, liabilities, where are you? That will help you have a really fantastic starting point, because you'll have your income and expenditure, you'll have your assets and liabilities, you'll sort of know how much money you'll need to say no to everything you don't want to do. And that then allows you to start thinking about building that framework towards financial independence. Now, I was going to talk about the 4% rule, but unfortunately today we haven't got enough time. So I'm going to save that one for next time and explore why next time the 4% rule is a useful starting point, but actually quite flawed when it comes to working out how much money you actually need to achieve financial independence. We'll talk about that next time, along with a special guest that will be announcing soon. And whatever you want me to talk about, I'm happy to have a chat about. Please feel free to leave in the comments any subject, any topic. And if I feel I've got the expertise on it, I will happily talk about it. If I haven't, I'll invite a guest on who can help and support us understand it a bit more. Hopefully that was useful, and I will see you next time on Cervello Live.